This is the news in brief from the United Nations. An Ebola vaccination campaign has begun in Northwest Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, to halt the spread of a deadly new outbreak in the country, where the disease is endemic. The UN World Health Organization, WHO, said on Wednesday that people have now been inoculated in Mbandaka, the capital city of Equateur Province West. It follows the deaths of 2 people from Ebola during the past week. More than 230 contacts of the deceased have now been identified and monitored, and 3 vaccination teams will work to reach those at highest risk, according to WHO. The vaccination is injected according to the ring strategy, whereby the contacts and the contacts of confirmed Ebola patients receive the jab, as well as frontline and health workers. DRC has seen 14 Ebola outbreaks since 1976 and 6 since 2018. An alert for chocolate lovers now, with the news that 11 countries have reported salmonella food poisoning linked to popular Kinder products produced in Belgium. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday that there have been more than 150 cases of salmonella poisoning from Belgium to the US after the UK flagged a cluster of cases a month ago, leading to a global recall. The exact source of the outbreak has not been identified, but genetic sequencing of the salmonella bacteria showed that it originated in Belgium. At least 113 countries across Europe and globally have received Kinder products, WHO said, adding that salmonella bacteria matching the human cases of infection were found in buttermilk tanks at chocolate makers Ferrero in the Belgian city of Arlon last December and January. In a statement, WHO said that the outbreak strain of salmonella is resistant to 6 types of antibiotics. Symptoms of salmonellosis are relatively mild and patients will make a recovery without specific treatment in most cases. However, the risks are high for some children and elderly patients, where dehydration can become severe and life-threatening. Back to school now, and promising news that when it comes to maths performance, girls are now as strong as boys, although there are plenty of barriers holding them back. The finding from the UN agency UNESCO followed analysis of primary and secondary education in 120 countries. Although boys perform better than girls in the subject in the early years, this gender gap disappears in secondary school, even in the world's poorest countries, researchers found. Some countries even saw girls do better than boys in maths, including Malaysia, where by age 14, girls have a 7% lead on boys. Despite this progress, the UN Educational, Cultural and Scientific Agency warned that gender biases and stereotypes will continue to affect girls' schooling, as boys are far more likely to be overrepresented at the top level of maths in all countries. The problem extends to science, with data from middle and high-income countries showing that although girls in secondary schools score significantly higher in scientific studies, they are still less likely to opt for careers in science, technology, engineering and maths, the so-called STEM subjects. Daniel Johnson, UN News. This is the news in brief from the United Nations. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres visited sites of suspected war crimes in Ukraine on Thursday, where he condemned the evil violence committed against civilians and urged criminal accountability. The UN chief's visit to the Kiev suburbs of Borodyanka, Bucha and Irpin comes 9 weeks since the invasion by Russia, which Mr. Guterres urged to accept to cooperate with the ongoing investigation launched by the International Criminal Court, the ICC.
When we see this horrendous sight, it makes me feel how important it is, a thorough investigation and accountability. I fully support the International Criminal Court and I appeal to the Russian Federation to accept to cooperate with the International Criminal Court.
Earlier this month, UN Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet said that she'd been horrified by images showing the bodies of dead civilians lying in the streets of Bucha and in improvised graves. Echoing the Secretary-General's call for justice for the victims of atrocities in Ukraine, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, said that he favoured neither Russia nor Ukraine in the search for the truth. Here's Karim Khan now, speaking to journalists on Wednesday evening outside the Security Council at UN headquarters in New York.
This is not really a time for talking, it's a time for action. International law cannot be a passive spectator. It can't be sedentary. It needs to move with alacrity to protect and to insist on accountability. The law is above us, and if the law is not above us, there's nothing below us except the abyss.
ICC prosecutor Khan launched an investigation into possible war crimes and crimes against humanity on the 2nd of March at the request of more than 40 member states. A team of analysts, anthropologists and investigators have already examined several locations in Ukraine, including Lviv, Kiev and Bucha. The prosecution of Brazil's former president, Luiz da Silva, violated his right to a fair trial, his right to privacy and his political rights, the UN Human Rights Committee has found. The committee, whose members are independent rights experts appointed by the Human Rights Council, issued its findings after the former president, who's commonly called by his nickname Lula, filed a complaint to the panel. He was Brazil's president from 2003 to 2010 and a target in a massive corruption probe called Operation Car Wash. Investigators uncovered corruption between the state-owned oil and petrol company, Petrobras, several construction companies and various Brazilian politicians, relating to secret campaign funds. In July 2017, Lula was sentenced to 9 years in prison. This was later increased to 12 years, effectively preventing him from standing again for president during that time. The Human Rights Committee noted that wiretaps of Lula and his family had been approved and released to the media before formal charges were made. This and other incidents contravened his right to privacy and his right to the presumption of innocence, the committee said. While states have a duty to investigate and prosecute acts of corruption and to keep the population informed, especially when a former head of state is concerned, such actions must be conducted fairly and respect due process guarantees, said committee member Arif Bulkan. Africa is in the grip of a surge in outbreaks of diseases that can and should be prevented through vaccinations, the UN Health Agency said on Thursday. In an alert, the World Health Organization, WHO, said that the continent recorded almost 17,500 cases of measles between January and March this year. That marks a 400% increase compared with the same period in 2021, and it's been caused by the fact that 20 countries reported measles outbreaks in the first quarter of this year, which is 8 more than 12 months ago. Outbreaks of other vaccine-preventable diseases are also more common now, the WHO said. It pointed to the 24 countries that have confirmed outbreaks of polio in 2021, which is 4 more than in 2020. Yellow fever has also spiked in Africa, with 13 countries seeing outbreaks in 2021, compared with 9 in 2020 and just 3 in 2019. Among the reasons for this problem, WHO cited ongoing inequalities in accessing vaccines and disruption to local healthcare caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Both have impaired routine immunisation services in many African countries and forced the suspension of vaccination drives. Daniel Johnson, UN News. This is the news in brief from the United Nations. Ukraine's humanitarian crisis is continuing to worsen, and to help communities affected by the war there, the UN Migration Agency IOM has appealed for more than $500 million. Since the Russian invasion on the 24th of February, over 7.7 million people have been internally displaced inside Ukraine, IOM said on Friday. It added that over 5 million refugees and 233,000 third-country nationals have also sought safety in neighbouring countries, and that it aims to help reach over 10 million people if sufficient funding is forthcoming. Vulnerable women, children, elderly people and those with disabilities will receive assistance, the UN agency said in a statement, adding that a key objective was to boost capacity in shelters, reception centres and transit sites in a safe and dignified manner. The cause of a deadly outbreak of severe liver failure in children continues to puzzle medical professionals who are nonetheless making progress in getting to the bottom of the mystery, the UN Health Agency said on Friday. To date, there have been more than 170 cases of acute severe hepatitis in 16 countries, with most in the UK. 1 child has died. Dr. Philippa Easterbrook from the World Health Organization, WHO, said that all the usual explanations for hepatitis did not apply to any of the children, many of whom have had to have liver transplants after falling sick. One of the most promising hypotheses was that a common adenovirus was the likely cause, although this remains unproven, Dr. Easterbrook said.
This is a severe acute hepatitis with yet unexplained causation. I think what makes this distinct is that this is in previously healthy children. We sometimes see a severe hepatitis, particularly in those children with compromised immune systems, but this has generally been in previously healthy children.
The WHO officials stressed that the COVID vaccine wasn't to blame for the illness, as the vast majority of affected children hadn't had the jab. Mali's ban on 2 major international broadcasters operating inside the country is a worrying development in itself, but it reflects growing regional intolerance towards freedom of expression, the UN Rights Office OHCHR has warned. OHCHR spokesperson Ravina Shamdasani highlighted the pervasive chilling effect on journalists and bloggers of press restrictions in the West African nation, and said that the move against Radio France International, RFI, and France 24 was just the latest in a string of actions by the military authorities.
We are deeply dismayed by the Malian media regulator's decision to definitively suspend Radio France International, RFI, and France 24. We call on Mali's transitional military authorities to reverse this ban and to allow independent media to work freely in the country.
Mali has seen 2 armed ousters in the last 2 years, the first in August 2020, the second in May last year. Before they were taken off air, both broadcasters were accused of publishing false allegations about reports of human rights violations by the Malian army. More, not less, scrutiny is needed of the actions of the authorities, Ms. Shamdasani told journalists in Geneva on Friday, her comments coming after some 500 people were allegedly summarily executed in Mora, a village in central Mali, earlier this month. Daniel Johnson, UN News.